This is your regular reminder that the story in Genesis 19 of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is not a lesson about the evils of homosexuality. It's a lesson about the evils of inhospitality. Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion, and the academic consensus is that this story is being told so as to represent the men of Sodom as being supremely inhospitable to the outsiders, in marked contrast to the supreme hospitality that is shown them in the previous chapter by Abraham. And there's even a parallel story, which I think is most likely the inspiration for the story, in Genesis 19. And that's in Judges 19, where a Levite is traveling back home and is forced to spend the night in a town he does not know, and the exact same thing happens. And in both cases, the men of the town are represented as being supremely inhospitable because they threaten the visitors with sexual assault, which was considered the most demeaning, debasing, insulting thing a man could do to another man, because by subjugating them sexually, they rob them of their status as a man, which is the pinnacle of the social hierarchy of domination in that time period. And obviously, this has to do with the fact that it was considered inappropriate for a man to engage in sexual intercourse with a man. But this had nothing to do with love and intimacy and long-term monogamous relationships. This reflected the idea that no man would willingly take the receptive role in an act of male same-sex intercourse, that it could only be exploitation and violence against the man who is subjugated, and that's why it was considered so demeaning, so debasing, so insulting. And we can look at other representations of this story to see very different interpretations of what's going on here, none of which focus on same-sex intercourse, much less same-sex attraction. If we look in Ezekiel 16:49, for instance, it says, "The sin of Sodom was prosperous ease and overabundance of bread. They did not strengthen the hand of the poor and the needy." And it says they engaged in abominations, and some people want to try to smuggle the idea of homosexuality into that, but that's not what's going on here. That's almost certainly a reference to the threat of sexually assaulting another man. Now we can also look in the 7th verse of the 1 chapter of the Epistle of Jude. Some people will translate sarkosoteros as strange flesh and interpret that as inappropriate sexual attraction. And it is inappropriate sexual attraction, but it has nothing to do with homosexuality. In context, it's very clear, as the academic consensus demonstrates, that this is actually about humans trying to engage in sexual intercourse with angels, which is why it talks about angels leaving their first estate in the previous verse. And this is referring to the events of Genesis 6, but particularly through the interpretive lens of 1st Enoch and the Enochic literature. And it says it's sarkosoteros, other flesh, because they're seeking after sex with angels rather than with humans. It has absolutely nothing to do with same-sex intercourse or same-sex attraction. It's condemning humans having sex with angels, which was considered a big deal at the time, and which we actually see reflected in other New Testament literature talking about angels not having sexuality. So when people try to leverage this passage as a lesson about the evils of same-sex intercourse or same-sex attraction, they're wrenching this ancient story out of its social and its moral and its literary and rhetorical context, because they want to use it as a rhetorical bludgeon against already vulnerable groups. And that is hateful, that is harmful, that is ignorant, that is unbiblical. Stop doing it. And the fit for this video has been Metallica and Justice.